Let's be honest about what's happening in Britain today. We're constantly told that taxing the wealthy properly would somehow damage our economy beyond repair. GB News presenters warn us night after night. Conservative politicians insist it's impossible. Think tanks produce endless papers claiming it would drive wealth creators overseas. But have you ever wondered who's funding these messages? Paul Marshall, GB News owner with his hedge fund fortune, has channelled over $500,000 to the Conservative Party while supporting think tanks that oppose taxing people in his position. Graham Edwards, property magnate who now sits on the Tory board, contributed £500,000 to party funds in just 1 year. Christopher Harborne, the financial backer who gave Nigel Farage's political ventures an unprecedented £13.7 million, the largest political donation we've seen in UK history. Meanwhile, Amazon generated $24 billion from British consumers yet paid just $18.7 million in tax. Meanwhile, across our towns and cities, 3.1 million emergency food parcels were distributed to families who couldn't make ends meet. This isn't a coincidence, it's a carefully designed system. But here's something you might not expect. There's a rebellion brewing among millionaires themselves. They call themselves the patriotic millionaires. A growing movement of wealthy individuals with a straightforward message: tax us and tax us properly. These aren't guilt-ridden inheritors. They're successful business owners, investors and entrepreneurs who've looked at our fractured society and decided this cannot continue. They're proud to pay more to address inequality, proud to pay more to ease the cost of living for working families, proud to pay more to invest in education, and proud to pay more on their substantial wealth. So who are the patriotic millionaires? The patriotic millionaires began in America in 2010, when a group of high net worth individuals came together with a radical proposition. They wanted to pay higher taxes. What started as a small collective has grown into an influential organisation with hundreds of members across the United States. People worth millions or billions who advocate for policies that would increase their own tax bills. In 2021, the movement crossed the Atlantic. British entrepreneurs and inheritors formed Patriotic Millionaires UK, bringing the same message to our shores. Gary Stevenson has become one of the UK's most prominent voices, a former trader who has since created a YouTube channel where he educates the masses on raising taxes on the wealthiest. Stevenson speaks with the authority of someone who's seen the system from the inside. The current system isn't just unfair, Stevenson argues. It's economically inefficient, and extreme wealth concentration actually hampers growth and innovation. Julia Davies, another key member who inherited wealth and now runs an environmental investment fund, puts it plainly. We're not asking for praise, we're asking for policy change. A 2% wealth tax on fortunes over 10 million would raise significant revenue while affecting only a tiny fraction of the population. What unites these diverse individuals is a shared conviction that extreme wealth accumulation without corresponding taxation threatens the very foundations of our society. They advocate for closing loopholes in capital gains taxes that allow the wealthy to pay lower rates than their secretaries. They push for inheritance tax reform to prevent dynasties of untaxed wealth. And they call for a proper wealth tax that would ensure that those with the broadest shoulders carry their fair share. We're not anti-wealth, insists Phil White, another UK member. We're anti-inequality. There's a difference between success and excess. These aren't typical campaigners. They're insiders, wealthy stakeholders in the system, warning that without meaningful reform, our entire economic structure risks becoming unsustainable. As they've collectively put it, the true measure of a society can be found not just in how it treats its most vulnerable, but in what it asks of its wealthiest members. Our society is one of tax pride or economic shame, and that's the choice before us. The patriotic millionaires continue a tradition of wealthy individuals who understood that substantial fortune brings responsibility. Andrew Carney, once the world's richest man, declared in 1889 that the wealthy are merely trustees of their fortunes, with a moral obligation to reinvest in society. He established libraries and educational institutions across Britain and America, recognising that concentrated wealth harms the social fabric. William Wilberforce challenged the economic elite of his day to end the slave trade, a system that enriched the British upper classes while causing immense suffering. He demonstrated that true patriotism means confronting powerful interests when they profit from injustice. During the Great Depression, Franklin D. Roosevelt implemented higher taxes on America's wealthiest to fund the New Deal. Rebuilding a broken economy through public investment, the result wasn't economic collapse, but unprecedented prosperity. These figures understood what today's patriotic millionaires recognise: wealth without responsibility undermines society's foundations. The statistics tell a concerning story. The UK's 50 wealthiest families control more wealth than 33 million Britons combined. The richest 1% hold nearly a quarter of the nation's wealth, double their share since the 1980s. Tax arrangements that benefit the ultra-wealthy cost the Treasury $5 billion annually, funds that could help transform our public services. This isn't merely unfair, it's unsustainable. When wealth concentrates too narrowly, democratic institutions begin to erode. That's what makes the patriotic millionaires so remarkable. They're not seeking approval, they're asking for proper taxation, not from guilt, but from a clear-eyed view of where inequality leads. They understand that a society investing in education, healthcare, housing and opportunity creates prosperity for everyone, including the wealthy, and a society that neglects its foundations eventually falters. When we talk about taxing wealth properly, the same tired arguments always surface. Let's examine these myths and the powerful interests they want us to believe. Myth 1. The wealthy will flee the country. This is perhaps the most common scare tactic. Tax the rich and they'll all move to Monaco. But research from Stanford University and the London School of Economics tells a different story. When California raised taxes on millionaires, the migration rate increased by just 0.8%. A comprehensive study of European wealth taxes found minimal evidence of capital flight. The truth? Most wealthy people stay put regardless of the tax rates. Their lives, their businesses, their families and communities and social networks are firmly rooted where they live. As British patriotic millionaire Gary Stevenson puts it, Britain is my home. I'm not leaving because I'm asked to contribute more. That's a threat with no substance. Myth 2. The rich already pay their fair share. We often hear that the top 1% pay a significant percentage of income tax. What this conveniently ignores is that income tax is just one type of tax, and not the one that matters to the most of the ultra-wealthy. The reality? When you account for all taxes, including VAT, council tax and others, the poorest 10% of Britons pay 42% of their income in tax, while the richest 10% pay just 34%. This is because the wealthy derive most of their fortune from capital gains and dividends, which are taxed at lower rates than income from work. As Julia Davies from Patriotic Millionaires UK explains, I pay a lower tax rate on my investment returns than my cleaner pays on their wages. How is that fair? Myth 3. Taxing wealth punishes success. This argument equates any attempt to tax extreme wealth with punishing achievement. It's a clever sleight of hand that conflates moderate success with obscene fortune. The truth? No one becomes a billionaire solely through hard work. Extreme wealth accumulation depends on public infrastructure, educated workforces, and legal systems that we all pay for. A wealth tax simply asks those who've benefited most from these shared investments to contribute accordingly. Phil White, another patriotic millionaire, frames it perfectly. No one's suggesting we punish success. We're suggesting that after your first 10 million, you can afford to give a bit more back to society that's made your success possible. Myth 4. Wealth taxes don't work in practice. Critics point to abandoned wealth tax schemes in European countries as evidence that they're unworkable. What they don't mention is why those specific implementations face challenges. The reality? Previous wealth taxes often failed because they were poorly designed, with low thresholds that captured too many people and too many exemptions that allowed the ultra-wealthy to escape. Modern wealth tax proposals learn from these mistakes, focusing narrowly on extreme wealth with fewer loopholes. As the patriotic millionaires point out, we have the technology and the expertise to implement effective wealth taxes today. What we lack is the political will. Myth 5. Taxing the rich won't solve your problems. This argument suggests that even if we tax billionaires at higher rates, it wouldn't generate enough revenue to make a difference. The truth? Only one of the proposals, a 2% wealth tax on fortunes over 10 million, would raise approximately 20 billion annually. Enough to fund substantial improvements in our NHS, education system or housing crisis. That's not a small change. More importantly, as wealth inequality continues to grow, addressing it becomes not just an economic necessity, but a democratic one. Extreme wealth concentration leads to extreme power concentration, threatening the very foundations of our democratic society. The patriotic millionaires understand this connection between wealth and power. They're not just advocating for higher taxes, they're fighting for a more balanced functional democracy where policy isn't dictated by the highest bidder. As they collectively argue, this isn't just about revenue, It's about what kind of society we want to be. One where wealth and power are concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, or one where prosperity is shared and democracy thrives. These myths serve a purpose: to maintain a status quo that benefits a tiny minority at the expense of everyone else, or by challenging them. So we face a genuine choice. We can accept the narrative that taxing wealth appropriately is somehow harmful to Britain, or we can recognise that true patriotism means contribution, not avoidance. The patriotic millionaires have made their position clear. They are advocating for a system where success brings responsibility, not exemption, where wealth supports positive change, not political manipulation. They cannot transform Britain alone. They need our voices too. Discuss this with your friends and colleagues, share it, challenge the idea that taxing extreme wealth is radical, because the truly radical position is allowing inequality to grow unchecked while families in our community struggle with basic necessities. Our future will be shaped by those who stand up for ordinary people's rights to prosperity and dignity. That's the choice before us, and it begins with what you do next.